Good morning, students. Welcome back to the video lectures on the paper Object-Oriented Concepts and Programming with C++. It has been quite a long gap as most of the faculty members of the department are involved in preparing the e-learning content and e-learning material for the Department of Collegiate Education, which in turn helps you also. In today's class, I will be explaining about another additional concept of functions in C++ called default arguments. In our last class, we learned about the concept of function overloading. What do you mean by function overloading? A function overloading is an additional feature in C++ function where in the same program we can have set of function with the same name but perform different operation. Then you also learned about what are the rules you should follow to overload a function. In order to overload a function, the first thing is all the functions should have the same name, but they should differ in either the number of argument or they should differ in the data type of the argument. Even the return type is same or different, it doesn't matter. And we know that function overloading is one way of achieving polymorphism. So in our last class, we learned about how polymorphism is achieved through function overloading. There is another concept called operator overloading that I'm going to discuss in my subsequent class. So that is another way of achieving polymorphism. In C++, polymorphism can be achieved in two different ways. One is function overloading, the other one is operator overloading. These two overloading are also called as function polymorphism and operator polymorphism respectively. In today's class, we will discuss about what are default argument, what are the rules for providing default values for the arguments of a function, and what are the advantages of default argument. After attending today's class, you will be able to understand the purpose and the meaning of default argument, how default values can be provided for function argument, and what are the advantages of default argument concept. In C++, what happens is you can call a function without specifying all its argument. But in C, what happens is if you define a function prototype like float f int comma int main, the function name is f. It takes two arguments, both of them are int type, and the return type is float type. So since the prototype says that the function needs two arguments, during function call also you can call the function by specifying two arguments. What happens if you call the function with only one argument? In C language, what happens is you will get an error message because the prototype says that the function needs two arguments. But while calling a function, you are passing only one argument, means there is a mismatch and the compiler generates an error message. But in C++, it is possible to call a function without specifying all its arguments. In the prototype you mentioned there are four arguments. While calling, you can call with all the four arguments, you can call with three arguments, you can call with two arguments, you can call with one argument, or you can call with without any argument also. But that is possible only through the concept of default arguments. Whenever you call a function with less number of arguments, the prototype says that the function needs two arguments. But when you call the function with only one argument, means one argument is missing. In such a case, the function assigns a default value to the argument which is missing. Suppose the function arguments are a and b, and the prototype says that float f int comma int means you have to pass two arguments of int type. And when you call the function like c equal to f of a comma b, no problem, because the prototype also says there are two arguments and you're calling the function also with two arguments. Instead of that one, if you call the function like c equal to f of a, then what happens is one argument, the second argument is missing, means then for the second argument, it makes use of some default value. The default value you should specify in the prototype. So the default values are specified when the function is declared. That means during the prototyping only, you should specify what is the default value for an argument which may be missing while calling a function. In that case, what happens is the compiler looks at the prototype to see how many arguments the function needs. And when you call the function with any of the argument is missing mean, then for the missing argument, it takes the value from the default list. You consider the following example. Float sum float a comma float b equal to 6.5. Here the prototype says that the function name is sum. There are two arguments. One is a, the other one is b. And both the arguments are float type and the return type is also float type. So here what happens is when you call the function with two arguments, then the value 6.5 that you have mentioned for the second argument has no meaning. So default values will be used only when you call the function with some argument missing. So when you call the function like c equal to sum of only 10.2, then what happens is the prototype says that the function needs two arguments. But while calling the function, you are calling the function with only one argument called 10.2 mean. Then the 10.2 is used for the variable a. The second argument missing means in the missing argument, it makes use of the default value. You already mentioned in the prototype that the default value for the second argument is 6.5. In that case, the function automatically called like c equal to sum of 10.2 comma 6.5. Here in the example, what happens is one of the argument is missing. If any argument is missing means it will make use of the default value. So default arguments are not considered when the function has the value for all the arguments. Suppose the prototype we have mentioned the function has two arguments. While calling the function also, if you specify two argument mean, then the default value has no meaning. But when you call, in the prototype, you mentioned that the function has two arguments, and while calling the function, you call it only one argument mean, then for the missing one, it makes use of the default value. So such a flexibility is not available in C language. In C language, what happens is the function call should exactly match with the function prototype. How many arguments you have mentioned in the prototype, while calling also, you should call the function with that number of argument only. If any one argument is missing means the compiler generates an error message. But this is not there in case of C++ because C++ is much more flexible with respect to function when compared to C. If any arguments are missing, the compiler will never generate an error message. It checks whether you have mentioned the default value in the prototype. If you have mentioned the default value in the prototype, then for the missing argument, it takes the default value. For example, but if the arguments are present mean, then the default has no meaning. For example, if the function is called is made like c equal to sum of 10.2 comma 9.2. The prototype also says that there are two arguments. While calling also are calling with two argument mean, then the function for a, it assigns the value 10.2 and for b, it makes the value of 9.2. In that case, it will not use the default value 6.5 because both the arguments are present mean default has no meaning. Whereas in the previous example, c equal to sum 10.2 mean you are calling the function with only one argument. One argument is missing. In that case, for the missing argument, it makes use of the default value 6.5. Then you should follow certain rules while making the concept or making use of the concept of default argument. The first one is a default argument is checked for type at the time of declaration and evaluated at the time of function call. So it will make checks whether the prototype and the function call, the arguments are matching. If they're matching, then it will ignore the default value. If any of the argument is missing, then it checks whether for that argument you have given any default value or not. If the default value is given, then it will make use of the default value. The thing is, only trailing argument can have the default value. What is the meaning of trailing argument? Suppose the prototype says that float f int comma int. Here the prototype says that the function name is f. You have to give two arguments, both of them are int comma int, and in that and the return type is float type. So here how many arguments are there? Two arguments are there. If you want to specify the default value, there are two rules. One is you can specify the default value from the right side to left side. First, you have to specify the default value for the second argument. Then you have to specify the default value for the first argument. Suppose the function prototype is like this: float f int comma int comma int. In that case, 3 arguments are there. Mean then while specifying the default value, first you have to specify the default value for the third argument, then the second one, then the first one. So while giving the value default value, you should assign the default value from the right side to left side. That means the trailing argument should be given the default value first, then the next one, then the last one. Finally, you have to specify the default value for the leading argument. If there are 4 arguments, mean if you want to specify the default value, mean you can specify the default value, fourth one, then the third one, then the second one, then finally first one. But you can't specify the default value for the first one and leave the default value for the remaining. That is not allowed. So you cannot provide a default value for any argument in the middle of the argument list. It is wrong. For example, see float f int equal to 5 comma int comma int. Here there are 3 arguments, int, int, int. But here you are specifying the default value for the first argument. You are not specifying the default value for the second and third, mean it is wrong. Similarly, float f int comma int equal to 5 comma int. Here also 3 arguments are there. In this example, you are specifying the default value for the middle one. You are not specifying the default value for the first one and the last one. That is also wrong. But instead of that one, we write float f int comma int equal to 6. That is right, because there are 3 arguments. All the arguments are of int type, and you are specifying the default value for only one argument. In that case, it should be for the third one. If you want to, out of 3 arguments, if you want to specify the default value mean for 2 mean, then it should be for the third one and the second one. It's like this: float f int comma int equal to 8 comma int equal to 9. So here specifying the default value for the last 2. That is allowed. Otherwise, you can also write like this: float f int equal to 6, int equal to 5, int equal to 9. Here what happens is there are 3 arguments. You are specifying the default value for all the 3 arguments. That is okay. So you should remember 2 rules. One is you cannot specify the default value for any argument in the middle. While specifying the default value, specify the default value from rightmost argument to the leftmost argument. Don't give the default value for any argument in the beginning and leave the default value for the last argument. Don't do it, and it will not accept also. You will get an error message in such a case. What are the advantages of default argument? One is, with the help of default argument, we can add a new parameter to the existing function. So if while defining the function, you mention only 2 arguments. If you want to add an additional argument, that is possible. And default argument can be used to combine similar functions into one single function, and it helps in managing the complexity of your program easily. But the concept of default argument will be clear if you learn through some simple example. So now we'll illustrate the concept of default argument with 2 simple examples. Here, the program is to illustrate how default argument can be used in C++. The first line is #include iostream.h. That is for making use of cin, cout, insertion operator and extraction operator. #include conio.h. That is for clr, scr and getch function. Void main. Next, you take the next line. Float sum float equal to 6 comma float equal to 8. So this prototype says that the function name is sum. There are 2 arguments. Both the arguments are of float type. In this case, we are specifying the default value for the both arguments. That is permitted. The first argument, if it is missing, mean it takes 6. Second argument is missing, mean it makes use of the default value equal to 8. And I have declared 2 more variables called a comma b. Clear the screen. Enter 2 numbers. Here you have to input the values for a and b. Okay. Next one is cout without default argument sum a comma b. So here what happens is you are calling the function called sum with 2 arguments. Prototype also says that there are 2 arguments. In that case, it will not make use of the default value because you are passing both arguments. Mean default argument has no meaning. Okay. Next, cout with default value for the second argument. You call the function with sum only a. The prototype says that the function needs 2 arguments. But while calling the function sum, you are passing only one argument mean. For the second argument, it makes use of the default value. What is the default value for the second argument you are given? 8. So whatever value you have inputted for A, it will take it here. Since B is missing, it makes use of the default value for the B equal to 8. The third example, Cout with the default value for both arguments. Here what happens, you are calling the function sum without any argument. Here both the arguments are missing mean for both it will make use of the default value. The default value for A is 6 and the default value for B is 8. The first example, no default values are used because both arguments are present. The second example, one argument is missing mean only for B it makes use of the default value. The second case, in the last case, both arguments are missing mean for both argument it makes the default value. Okay. Suppose while executing the program, if the input is like this, A equal to 25 and B equal to 15. The value of A is you have inputted as 25 and the value of B you have given is 15. Then in that case, what happens is in this line, Cout without default argument sum A comma B means A it will make use of the value 25 and for B it makes use of the value 50. So here default value has no meaning means it becomes the sum of 25 and 15. 25 plus 15, it becomes 40. The second example here, with default value for the second argument, sum A mean only A it will take the original value. What the value for A? 25. B is missing mean B it makes use of the value 8. So what happens is here A value will be 25 and B value will be 8. It becomes 33. The next example, with the default value for both the argument, you are calling the function sum mean no arguments are there. In that case, for both A and B, it makes use of the default value. The default value for A is 6. The default value for B is 8 mean it becomes 6 plus 8, it becomes 14. Hope you understood how default arguments are used. If arguments are present, default argument has no meaning. Default values have no meaning. The arguments are missing mean it will take it from the default list. In the second example, calculating simple interest. Okay, float, simple, float equal to 1000, float equal to 5, float equal to 6.5. Here what happens is the function name is simple, the return type is float, and how many arguments are there? 3 arguments, and for each argument I have given the default value. For first argument the default value is 1000, and the second argument the default value is 5, and the last argument the default value is 6.5. While calling a function, if you give all the 3 arguments, then default has no meaning. If you call it with only 2 arguments, then for the third one it will take it from the default list. If you call the function with 1 argument, last 2 it will make use of the default value. If you call the function without any argument, then it will, in that case, it will make use of the default value for all the 3 arguments. So this function is to calculate the simple interest. Enter the value for PTR. So now what happens in the first example, I'm calling the function with all the 3 arguments mean these values 1000, 5 and 6.5 is not considered. So display the message simple interest without default argument, whatever value you got it for SI you display. So first example, no default values are used. Second case, SI equal to simple function P comma T. So here the last argument is missing. So P value, whatever value you have inputted, you will take it. T value, whatever value you have inputted, will take it, or it will take it the value of 6.5. Next. SI equal to simple of P. Here what happens is 2 arguments are missing. Only P value, it will make use of the value you have inputted. T and R, it makes use of the default value. For T, it will take 5, and for R, it takes 6.5. Last example, SI equal to simple without any argument. Here, all the 3 arguments are missing means for all the 3, it makes use of the default value. For P, it makes the default value equal to 1000. For T, it is 5, and for R, it is equal to 6.5. Okay. Suppose the values you have inputted is 8000, 10, and 5. In that case, what happens is here in the first case, SI equal to simple of PTR. So here all the 3 arguments are present. Then the values for PTR it will use is 8000, 10, and 5. But the value formula for simple interest PTR by 100. 8000 into 10, 80,000 by 5. 4 lakh divided by 100, it becomes 4,000. The second example, second case, you are calling the function simple with only 2 arguments called P comma T, and P value it will make use of 8000. T value, it makes use of 10. Sorry, 10. And for the R value, it will become R value, it becomes 6.5, because in the second case, R is missing, means for missing it takes 6.5. So here what happens is the formula become 8000 into 10 into 6.5. So it becomes, answer is 5200. The third case, I'm calling the function with simple of P. Here what happens, how many arguments are missing? 2 arguments are missing. So in that case, P value, it takes 8000. For T and R, it takes the value 5 and 6.5. So the formula become 8000 into 5 into 6.5 divided by 100. The correct answer is 2600. The last case, SI equal to simple. Here all the 3 arguments are missing, means, and for P it takes 1000, for T it becomes 5, and for R it takes 6.5. 1000 into 5 into 6.5 divided by 100, and the answer is 325. So in the first case, in the answer 4000, it will not make use of any default value. P value will be 8000, T value will be 10, R value will be 5 only. The second case, P value will be 8000, T value will be 10 only, R value is 6.5. In the next case, P value is 8000 only. For T and R, it is 5 and 6.5. The last case, P value is 1000, T value is 5, and R value is 6.5. Only in the last example, here default values will be used for all the 3 arguments. So I have given 2 simple examples to illustrate the concept of default argument. In the first case, it is just a summation of 2 numbers. If you give 2 numbers, it just add those 2 numbers. If you give only 1 number, second number, it will take it from the default value. If you don't specifically give any argument at the time of calling, then it will, for both the argument, it makes use of the default value. The second example of simple interest, if P, T, R, all the 3 parameters are passed, then it will not consider the default value. If you call it with only P and T, then for the R only, it uses the default value. If you call the function with only P, then for T and R, it makes use of the default value. If you call the function with only simple, then for all the 3 arguments, it utilizes the default values. Okay. Then the next concept about in function is const argument. It also stands for constant argument. In C++, an argument to a function can be declared as constant. In the prototype only, if I mentioned any argument as constant, for example, here, float, sum, constant. What the meaning? The function name is sum. The return type is float. How many arguments the function takes? The function takes only 1 argument. But before that argument, I mentioned the qualifier called const. For any argument, if you mention the qualifier con, then what happens is, inside the function, you are not supposed to change the value of that particular argument. So any argument in the prototype, we have mentioned it as a const, mean, then while defining the function, while writing the function, don't try to change the value of that particular argument. The qualifier const tells that the function should not modify that argument. Suppose here, float sum const int comma int. If you mention it as const int comma int, means then the function has 2 arguments. Only first argument is const, second argument is normal int, means you can modify the second argument, but you are not supposed to modify the first argument. The compiler generates an error message when this condition is violated. If you have mentioned the qualifier const for any particular argument, within the function definition, if you are trying to alter the value, then in that case, the compiler generates an error message. That is the purpose of const qualifier. Const qualifier is to preserve, or with the help of const qualifier, you are preventing the compiler, or you are preventing the modification of that particular argument. The argument never gets altered. Okay. In the examination, one question definitely generally appears from the default argument. It's something like this. What are default argument? Write the rules for specifying the default value for the argument. Explain with an example. Function overloading. Sorry, it's not function overloading. It is default argument in C++. Default argument. So whenever the question is like this, explain with an example. Default argument means any one. First, you have to mention the concept of default argument. Default argument is one where it is possible to call a function without passing all the argument. Whichever argument is missing, for that one, it will make it the default value. Either you can give the example of the first one, summation of two number, or you can give the simple example of calculating the simple integer. Any one example, you can give it and explain with suitable illustration. Let us see some simple multiple choice questions on today's class. Default values are specified in dash, whether it is specified in function prototyping, function call, function definition, none of this. Generally, default values are specified in the function prototyping. The correct answer is A. Default values are specified from right to left, left to right, any order, none of this. Generally, we know that the default value should be specified from the last argument, rightmost argument first, then the next rightmost, then the last time you can specify the default value for the leftmost argument. The correct answer is again A. Which of the following is an example for specifying default arguments correctly? Float f int equal to 5 comma int comma int. So here what happens? I am specifying the default value for the first argument. Second and third is missing. So that is wrong. In the second one, I am specifying the default value for the middle argument. That is also wrong. The third case, I am specifying the default value for the first two. Again, default value is missing for the last one. That is wrong. In the last case, int equal to mean we are specifying the default value for only one. In that case, it should be for the rightmost. The correct answer is D. Identify the wrong statement. Default values can be specified for all arguments. True. Default value can be specified for trailing arguments. That is also true. Default values can be specified for leading argument. That is wrong. None of this is also wrong. The correct answer is C. If a function has 3 arguments, then the default value can be specified for only first and second, all the 3, only second. If you want to specify default value for all the 3, it's okay. But it's not possible to specify the default value for the first and second and leave the default value for the third one. That is not possible. The correct answer is all the 3. Okay. In today's class, I explained in detail the concept of default argument. What are the rules you should follow while specifying the default values, and also illustrated the concept with some simple illustrative programs. For any feedback, you can call me over that number, or you can send your message to my WhatsApp number, or you can also call specify. Also write your doubts through the email address, or you can post your queries in the comment section of the Google class. Hope you have enjoyed today's session. Thank you.